And welcome back to the Correspondents on Voice of America. I'm Arcega in Washington. Well, in less than 3 weeks, President Barack Obama will say goodbye to the White House and wrap up his time as America's 44th president. Now, as you recall, he swept into office 8 years ago, promising hope and change. And yet, despite some of the challenges and the heated political rhetoric he's faced during his tenure, he leaves office next month with one of the highest approval ratings of any president in modern history. But how will history remember Barack Obama? White House correspondent Cindy Sain has our report.
The image of the first African-American ever elected U.S. president, holding hands with his wife and 2 young daughters, may have forever altered Americans' perceptions about who can win the White House. Early on, Obama focused on bringing to justice Osama bin Laden, the Al-Qaeda leader who had eluded former President George W. Bush. Late in the evening of Sunday, May 2nd, 2011, Obama addressed the American people.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.
But that big victory was soon followed by the start of the deadly civil war in Syria. And on August 21, 2012, Obama issued a warning to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad that came back to haunt the U.S. leader.
A red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized.
1 year later, observers say Assad's army killed more than 1,000 people with sarin gas. Contrary to expectations, the U.S. did not respond with force.
So, how will we remember this president? Well, to help us out with that, I'm joined by VOA's executive editor and now managing editor, my boss, Steve Redisch. So glad you could join us, Steve. Now, I'm going to call you a veteran journalist as well because you've covered a lot of presidents in your career. Let me ask you this. How much has this president succeeded in achieving his stated goal of hope and change?
Part way, I would say. There have been accomplishments, healthcare, Obamacare. He spent a lot of political capital to
He's had some success domestically.
That is a big domestic, the biggest domestic achievement that Obama had. He's also going to be known as the environmental president. He, by executive order, and he has been able to put into place environmental actions that will help diminish climate change or could diminish climate change. He also was able to achieve the Paris Climate Change Accords.
Right.
But there are a lot of other hope and change items that will be left for the next president or
particularly on the world front, right?
I think, as we saw with Syria, that is going to be the biggest issue and biggest mark of Obama's legacy is going to be that red line that he drew
missed opportunity,
and did not
you
cross.
Think? Was that a missed opportunity?
I think only history is going to be able to tell us whether that was a missed opportunity or not. He came in with the vow of pulling back from Afghanistan and Iraq and not committing U.S. troops to wars that either they cannot win or will be drawn into a stalemate. He wanted to pull them back. He was able to do that in Afghanistan, but we're still there. He was able to do that in Iraq, but we had to go back in. And in Syria, he felt that it was not worth the blood and the resources that would be necessary to achieve victory if victory was ever going to be achieved.
Now, let me talk to you about another item that's recently in the news on the sorry state of U.S.-Israel relations. Is that something, the prospects for peace diminishing, obviously, is that something the president has to carry part of the blame for?
If he has to carry part of the blame, then President Bush, President Clinton, President Bush, President Reagan, all the way back
down the line.
Nobody's been able to achieve and get to a point where the Palestinians and the Israelis are going to agree on an accord. John Kerry has been tireless in trying to get both sides to the table and to reach an agreement. President Trump, President-elect Trump has said that he can try and make a deal and will try to make a deal. But it's really going to be up to the Israelis and the Palestinians to decide whether or not to come to the table and what they're going to be able to give up in order to gain peace.
I suspect that's going to be up to the incoming president to deal with that issue. But still, one of the things that is often forgotten is that 8 years ago, President Obama did steer this country out of possibly the worst financial crisis we've seen in modern history. Does he get credit for that, or will he be remembered purely for his foreign policy mistakes?
You mentioned earlier that his approval rating has been one of the highest of any departing president. He goes out with over 50% approval rating. I think part of that is reflected in the economy reflects part of that. But also, I think we will be able to see how successful Obama was with the economy several years down the road once he hands this off to President-elect Trump, and see what President-elect Trump does with his economic policies and whether or not he builds or changes course or moves in a different direction.
Speaking of President-elect Donald Trump, another Twitter war erupted between the two just earlier this week when the president suggested he could have possibly won the 2016 election. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that...
could he have done more to help Hillary Clinton?
I think he did quite a bit to try and help Hillary Clinton. He was out more on the campaign trail than President Bush 43, as well as President Clinton combined, out trying to help Hillary Clinton secure the presidency. He wanted her to get that job, win that election in order to secure his legacy.
Sure.
So I think he did as much as he could, but I don't necessarily know whether or not he could have beaten Donald Trump. It's a hypothetical that we're never going to ever really realize.
But it's the kind of question we like to ask amongst ourselves, don't we?
We always do, and I think he looks at that 50% plus approval rating as proof that perhaps he could have. So
let's wrap this up. How does history judge this president, the first African-American president in the U.S.?
I think that's going to be the first line of whatever legacy there is. He was the first. He broke the color barrier. He broke other barriers as well. Healthcare, he's going to be known for environment, and he's also going to be known for Syria.
And 8 years scandal-free.
Scandal-free, although his detractors will say, not so fast.
Not so fast. All right. Thank you so much, Steve Redisch. We're going to take another quick break right now, but when we come back, the 2016 roll call, a look back at some of the stars and celebrities we lost in 2016. And just a reminder, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, questions, and comments on our Facebook page. The address is VOA The Correspondents. We'll be right back.